Welcome everyone to the Growth Mindset webinar. My name is Bryony, and I'm going to be with you for this next hour talking all things growth mindset. This is where our well, I say little, our grade one beautiful listed building, our Jarrell Training HQ is. And if you ever come and see us for training, that is where you'll come. But obviously, we also do virtual training and we come to your own organizations and businesses as well. My name is Bryony, like I said, and I've been in the training and development space for over 20 years, working with lots of different businesses across all different industries, really looking about how we can unlock potential in our people, whether it's in ourselves or whether it's our teams. We're looking at how our mindset and our intrinsic motivators really shape what we do on the extrinsic side of things, how we communicate, how we lead teams, how we drive results. And all of those things we're going to be sharing about today in Growth Mindset, because this is very much about the intrinsic side of how we help develop our teams and we get the organizational results we want, whilst motivating the individual to want to achieve things through discretionary effort. So today, we're going to be covering what growth mindset is and what it looks like in those real leadership moments, especially under pressure, which I think in the chat, Mark, you said that's exactly what you wanted. How individual reactions influence our team dynamics, how we actually develop psychological safety and accountability, as well as motivating our teams. And we're going to look at how you can model as a leader that learning, that building progress, that curiosity, and that's going to allow you to keep your authority and keep your credibility, but also draw out more potential in yourself and your people. And we're going to look at some practical leadership behaviors that are going to allow you to have that adaptability, build that motivation, and then have sustained performance, because this is about something we want to keep going rather than something that's just a one-off tick box or a buzzword or anything like that. So this isn't about this isn't a webinar where we're going, oh, it's about doing mindset better. That's not what it's about. Growth mindset is not a personality trait. It's something that we can develop and we can choose to do it and we can choose not to. So fundamentally, what we need to make sure we know is, what is growth mindset? So I'm going to do a quick quiz and I want you to answer in the chat, and I want you to be able to really think about what your answer is and pop your answer in the chat. Try not to get influenced by other people, because if things start flooding in, doesn't necessarily mean that they're right. Okay. So are you all ready? Yeah. Right. So what is a growth mindset? So is it A, believing that people can develop their capabilities over time through effort, learning, and feedback, whilst leading in ways that support experimentation, reflection, and improvement? Is it B, creating a culture of high standards where individuals are expected to adapt quickly, deliver results, and continuously raise their level of performance? Or is it C, maintaining that positive can-do attitude that encourages optimism and resilience, even when the results are under pressure? What do we think? Lots coming in. Got some C's, got some A's, A, B, and C. Thank you. Yeah, all three. All of them, some people are saying, all of them. C or A and C, a mix of all three. Da, 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 da. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Keep them coming in if you haven't already answered. But I am going to reveal that the answer is A. Now, there are traits within B and C that I was very sneaky and put into those particular definitions. But A is actually the correct growth mindset definition. But there are a few words that you were probably drawing out it from B and C, because they are words that we do still want in our teams. And what we want is that high standards, say in B, or raising the level of performance and all of those things. But there's something fundamentally different in the way that these are phrased. And that's where the growth mindset language starts to really kick in. So with B, for example, this is often mistaken for growth mindset, but actually it's quite outcome centric. So if you can see that word expected to adapt quickly, suddenly we're putting that expectation on, that pressure on to do it and continually raising. Well, yes, we want to grow and we want to develop, but if we are in a space of continuously raising it, get better, 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 every time we achieve something, we have to go higher and higher and higher and push harder and push harder and push harder. Eventually, what's going to happen? Let me know in the chat if we're always going drive for more, drive for more, drive for more. What's going to happen to ourselves and our team? Burnout. Thank you. Yeah. Burnout. Absolutely. Yeah. We'll snap. Yeah, absolutely. Burnout. People will rebel. Exactly. Why is that? They're absolutely right. Why do we fundamentally get to a point where we just go, ugh, can't do it anymore? Mutiny. I love that, Sue. Yeah, absolutely. People leave. Yeah, it really affects our staff retention. People are stressed. Yeah, people don't want to be there anymore because the pressure's too much. And often, if we're always striving for results, we can start to lose the people element there. We can start to lose the appreciation for what people have achieved actually. The next level becomes the new norm, and then we're going for the next one, and that's hard. Overwhelm. Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, absolutely. Now with C, the answer C, again, that's not quite right, but also it's plausible. But can anyone, before I say what it is, now we're sort of putting that different lens on and we're being a bit more scrutiny about the words. Why do you think C isn't growth mindset? What is it about it in the language? Let me know in the chat. Maintaining, maintaining. It's in the now. Maintaining, you're already at the peak. John, there's no reflection and growth. It's about the performance, maintaining. It's not always going to be sunshine and roses. It's more to do with attitude. Yeah, absolutely. Attitude, not behaviors. Yeah, great. Keep them coming. That's fantastic. Now, what C is yes, it's closer to positivity. However, we get to that place where I don't really like this term as such, but it's a common one, so I'll use the phrase toxic positivity. Do you know what I mean by that? When, we're expected to be positive. We're supposed to have that can-do attitude and encourage all of this stuff all the time. Even when we're stressed, we've got to keep that going. And actually, after a while, people aren't going to be able to maintain that, are they? It's okay to not feel okay. And actually, if we are maintaining, like you all pointed out there, maintaining a positive can-do attitude, then that's going to lead to very similar things that you said about in B, burnout, stress, overwhelm, because essentially we're putting on a mask that isn't actually, again, achievable. So with that growth mindset quote, that A, that can develop their capabilities over time, they're learning. And when we come to the word learning, we also know that we learn from mistakes, yeah? So things aren't always going to work. Therefore, we might not always be super positive about it in that very moment, but then we'll reflect and grow. So it's not forcing us to maintain a certain positivity space. That doesn't mean that we don't want to be optimistic and we don't want to be resilient. We like those words, but it's very much about how the language is shaped. And I very much did that quite deliberately in those, just spark this conversation. But you all got it. You saw through it. Well done, everyone. So, growth mindset, it's really going to be a fundamental in our modern management because, there's an uncertain economy. There are changes everywhere, internally, externally in our worlds, and we need to create and develop people who are agile, who are adaptable, who are flexible and can handle things and are resilient. And we can't ignore that as well with the newer workforces coming through, the newer generations coming through. We may have to adapt our leadership style in order to be able to get the most out of their potential and help unlock their potential, as well as changing our techniques for people who've been more experienced in the workforce. So in leadership, our growth mindset really shows up in how we respond to getting feedback from other people. How we respond to uncertainty, put my teeth in, how we respond to making mistakes or someone else making mistakes, how we respond to when people throw ideas that maybe go against what we think. All of those things are impacting our growth mindset. And particularly when we're under pressure, that's when our rawest state comes out. Now, in teams, we want that growth mindset to show up, and that's going to show up when people are asking questions. Then they're admitting when they've done something wrong or they don't know something, when they're challenging the norm, when they are challenging with new ideas. And remember, challenging doesn't mean being, "Grr, I'm challenging something." It just means that, you're proposing another idea. Maybe you're pushing back something for a reason. This is all in a respectful way, but we're seeing that growth mindset because they feel safe fundamentally to do so. So you've probably heard the word psychologically safe. Has everyone heard that phrase before? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Growth mindset, psychological safety, these all go hand in hand. Arguably, there's a lot of similarities in those two things. So essentially, today, yes, we're doing growth mindset, but you're kind of also doing psychological safety at the same time because they are so hand in hand and they are the foundations of being able to unlock potential in people because it makes us feel safe to be able to do all of those things that I just showed you on that slide. And fundamentally, growth mindset is a state, not a trait. So, what I mean by that is it's not a permanent personality characteristic. You don't just have growth mindset, even though sometimes it is spoken a bit like that. Actually, it's about how you are thinking, how you are responding to things. But you can switch that on and off. So you're going to have days where you're feeling in a proper growth mindset space and you're really open. But on days where maybe the pressure's starting to hit, or maybe stuff's going on at home because we all have that invisible backpack where things are going on that other people don't know, our growth mindset could waver. And that could then, filter out across our teams as well. So if, we're in a context where there's potentially a perceived threat or we feel uncomfortable in our environment, we might not feel as much in a growth mindset space as we would another day. And this can all link to like our fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Have you all heard of those before? Yeah. So those fundamental intrinsic chemical responses basically to protect us from danger. And in the modern day workplace, danger looks like, getting a deadline that's really, really tight, or someone needs something right now, or someone's just asked for a really difficult conversation and it's put you on the spot, or you're going to have to flex part of the personality that you don't normally. You might have to handle some emotion from someone, or you might have to push back from someone. Anything that's going to put us in a state of slight unease and stretching our comfort zone, that can trigger our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. So we need to be aware of those things because as a leader as well, we know that consistency is so key, isn't it, to help people feel comfortable within our teams and keep safe. And so actually, if one day you're showing growth mindset and then another day you're not, that could be confusing. And yes, we're all human, of course we are, but it's bringing awareness to it. So if we're also not feeling in a great growth mindset state, we can also communicate that with our teams. And we have the relationship with our teams to do that, to go, "Oh, sorry, I've just realized I'm really blocking things right now. Let's look at this again." And actually have that self-awareness to do that. So with growth mindset, it's the belief that and capability is not fixed and it can be developed over time through learning, effort, feedback, and the experience of doing things. So it's that consistency in behaviors to support, learn, be adaptable, improve, particularly when you're under pressure. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Carol Dweck. If you haven't, I really recommend doing a little bit of a Google on her because she's very much championing and kind of created the movement, I guess, of growth mindset. And she's an American psychologist who said that, this is something that can become cultural when leaders reinforce behaviors that are maybe negative and are not feeling in that growth mindset space and they're feeling more fixed. That can become a cultural ripple effect. But guess what? When the leaders are role modeling growth mindset tools and techniques, and we'll talk about some of those in a moment, that's going to then ripple effect too. We can build a culture that's open. So we want to push past the idea of going, yes, I have a growth mindset, and the values say it that are on the wall in our organization or in a handout on a piece of paper or on a document that's hidden in the depths of the computer world. We want our actions to actually come through and actually show it because at the end of the day, our mindset isn't just internal, it's actually context dependent. So, yes, it's going on in our own state, but we will express things. So, thinking about yourself, how challenge is framed to people, how mistakes are handled, how feedback is given, received, and how learning is prioritized alongside their performance and getting results. These things are going to fundamentally start to shape that growth mindset. But what I think is really important to recognize is that growth mindset isn't about lowering standards. Sometimes people hear the words growth mindset, psychological safety, and maybe do a bit of an eye roll and start to go, oh, it's all sort of fluffy, soft skills. Yeah. I spent most of my life teaching these fluffy soft skills, and I completely think that they are actually fundamental, essential skills because these are the things that are actually going to raise standards where people want to intrinsically perform and get better as opposed to feeling like they have to. And that all comes down to the belief cycle. So the beliefs you have cause you to feel in a certain way, which causes you to behave in a certain way, which produces a particular result. So how we perceive our environment creates our reality. So if we're looking through a lens of negativity, guess what we're going to see? Negativity. If you are suddenly on the way to work and you're running a little bit late, and you suddenly feel like you've stopped at every red light, guess what? All you're going to see is those red lights or the roadworks and all the things that are going to get in your way. And you're going to enhance and concrete that belief that, you're going to be late and the world's against you right now. Whereas, you can use the belief cycle for positivity. We can use the belief cycle to encourage ourselves to be able to make mistakes and then learn from them, or get confident to speaking out and sharing ideas because we want to be able to hear them, or whatever it might be. So if we choose to look through a lens of positivity, then actually we'll start to bring in and see and experience more positivity. And that's a real power of reframing, which we haven't got much time to talk about today. But if it's something that you want to learn a bit more about, then let me know in the chat because might do it as another webinar. Because reframing is so fundamental in terms of our belief systems and developing our thought patterns. Yes, please. Thank you very much. So fixed and growth mindset. Have you heard of these phrases before? Fixed mindset, growth mindset. Are they familiar phrases? Yeah. Now, like I said, and no, that's cool. What I sometimes think I hear people saying is, oh, that person has a fixed mindset and that person has a growth mindset. They might not say it in those exact words, but the way that they're talking about them implies it. But like I said, it's actually it can change in different moments. So we just need to be aware of it and bring awareness to it. So I'm just going to give you a few examples just so you can start to see the differences. And as we start to do it, perhaps you can see if you can beat me to it. So I'm going to give you a fixed example. And I wonder, once you get used to it, if you can then in the chat give me an example of what it would look like if it was a growth mindset. So feel stuck or you fall into the habit of, oh, it is what it is. That could be considered as a fixed growth mindset example. So, what would I ideally want? If you were one of my members of the team, what would I ideally want as the growth mindset example to reframe that, to shift that mindset? Because I'm sure that we have all heard the phrase, it is what it is. Or something similar, because we can fall into that so easily when we've tried things and then maybe red tape stops us doing something, or it just feels like it never works because one part of it's not quite right. Mark, what if? Yeah, I like that. That's nice and simple, isn't it? Felix will play a good game with the cards we've been dealt. Nice, I like that. Let's try something different. Yes, Hannah. What can I do to change things? Yeah, excellent. Brilliant. So I chose, and there's going to be thousands of different ones. Keep them coming in. It's great. We want to find creative solutions to that problem. So all the examples you're doing right now is absolutely getting me that. Let's try something different. That's a creative solution, isn't it? To help open up conversations to find those creative solutions. How about, yeah, Lindsay, that would work. You're sharing an idea. Change is good. What about someone who doesn't appreciate or want to accept feedback? Now, this could be positive or negative. So we want someone to feel value in feedback, but I'm sure, and let me know in the chat if you can recognize either in yourself or in your team where there are people who perhaps when they have got more areas for development or negative feedback, they maybe get defensive or they don't want to accept it. Or you give them a compliment and you give them praise and you want to share how good they are at something or what they've achieved, and then they find that really difficult as well. Have you got your, how are you feeling about yourselves taking feedback? If you're being completely honest in your own lens, because the way that you receive feedback is also going to role model to your teams. So I've known quite a lot of leaders who have been great at taking any negative, but maybe they weren't so great at receiving praise, particularly publicly. And therefore, their teams have all started to develop that too, because they feel like that's not quite how it should be. Definitely all of that. Chance to change. It's always good to receive feedback. Yeah, absolutely. Encourage curiosity. Fantastic. Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, we want to make sure that we've got that balance. We can accept positive and the negative. So as a leader right now, you can just think of in your head actually and go, do I give enough of one of the others? You know, negative here, when I'm saying the word negative, really what I mean is developmental. It's areas of development. How can we improve? Some people might be quite risk adverse and they prefer to avoid challenges. So, what could we potentially want them to really think about in order to open up a growth mindset space? Feedback's not an attack. Lovely. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, and Sue, important how you frame feedback. Same, Daisy. Absolutely. Michelle, reaction depends on who and how. Absolutely. I don't know if any of you have done your insights discovery, and if it's something you're interested in, then chat to us at the end for the personality psychometric profiling. But the way that you receive feedback to your different personalities is so, so different. And actually, just getting that slightly disaligned could actually mean that person doesn't receive that feedback in the way that it was intended. What's the worst that could happen? Yeah, with the risk advice, learning through failure, not challenging yourself is also a risk. Yeah, absolutely it is. Embracing different opinions. I love these. Yeah, excellent. So we want to be open to learn. We want to ask questions. We want to try new things. But you know what? It's all very well, maybe if you've got someone who is risk averse, but if someone's going, oh, don't worry about it, you'll be fine, is that going to make them feel safe to do a challenge? Because if it's a belief system that they've got, someone just going, oh, it'd be all right, is not going to be fundamentally enough. They're going to need someone role modeling to them that that risk is okay and they are supported whether they, whether it goes well or it doesn't. So these are the things that is actually looking at the actions and behaviors in the underlying space, not just the things we say. Sometimes there are people who are focused on really proving themselves. And so actually, we might need to shift them into a space of, well, getting this right is better than that person being right. Sometimes it's about the bigger picture rather than just that one person's opinion. And so, again, it's just thinking about the different personalities you have in your teams and in yourself. Are there certain bits where you're like, right, I do that well, I think I do that well, but that bit, maybe when I'm stressed, it's easier for me just to go, that's the way I want it done, and that's what I'm going to do. And of course, as leaders, we do need to make decisions and we do need to reach consensus and then, steer the ship. But also, is there a space where we're actually inhibiting what we are able to achieve as a team because we are not being as open to ideas and innovation as particularly possible? Leave a legacy that is greater than my legend. I love that. Thanks, Mitch. So, workplace culture, all of growth mindset is going to absolutely transform your workplace culture. And I'm sure you are already embedding growth mindset, even if you didn't realize you were. But like I said, psychological safety, growth mindset, and making people accountable for their performance, these all interlink because our environment shapes our behavior. And so one that I haven't written in there, but actually is hugely fundamental as well, is actually motivation because, we want people to give discretionary effort. We want them to have that goodwill to do things. And that is directly going to correlate by how safe they feel in that organization, in that space, in that task. Because if you imagine someone who's just going give, 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 and then there's no positive feedback, or maybe there is positive feedback, but they don't recognize it because it's not being communicated in the way that lands for them. That could also be an issue. Maybe they haven't got added value. Maybe they haven't got visible appreciation. Now, that one's quite key. Some people, well, most people are appreciative of what people do, but often it's not made visible. It just becomes a like, well, of course we are. Of course we're grateful for that. Or of course we appreciate that. But if we're not hearing it, we're not seeing it, then people start to forget or not believe it because that can be part of their intrinsic limiting beliefs as well. So when someone is not feeling like there is that visible appreciation, feedback, motivation, then they're not going to feel as safe to give more, to speak up, to challenge things. And therefore, your results could end up being lower. It could lower accountability and therefore affect the results. So we want to bring it into our workplace culture. So we're really thinking about the individual. So this could be you as a leader, or it could be them as a member of a team, and then how that's going to affect the team connection. Because teams don't copy what leaders say. They copy how leaders respond when things go wrong. And, like I said, it could be written all over the walls in fancy writing and on the website and all of that. But actually, it's, the proof is in the pudding, if you will. Every single action makes a difference. And new habits and new changes, they do take time to build. And building that trust takes a long time. Think of it like marbles in a jar. Every time you do one little action, it's a marble that goes in the jar to someone to show consistency. But we, I'm sure, all know that trust is so easily broken, and one thing could happen, and you just suddenly lose all those marbles that are in that jar, and we have to start again. So we want to build that trust within it. So, like I said, our environment influences our behaviors and our mindset towards change. So, as a leader, we set the tone. The teams learn from our habits and our reactions and responses. But what is also really, really fundamental is that silence still teaches us. Now, this is an interesting one. What I mean by that is if you feel like your team is just getting along with things, they're just doing what they're doing. They're probably quite, decent performing or even high performing, and they're just all doing their thing. Why do you think it's worth just being aware of that silence? Pop it in the chat. Why do you think I'm bringing this to the table here? Because silence can be a good thing. Everyone's just getting along with their stuff and doing their thing. But what could silence also mean? Oh, Rob, sorry, I didn't see that. Psychological safety is essentially people feeling safe to be who they are. And therefore, with that, it's feeling safe to speak up, to feel like they are going to be valued. Someone's not going to dismiss their thoughts or, be horrible to them or anything like that. And that actually they are a valued member of that workplace. So pretty much everything we're talking about in terms of growth mindset is almost psychological safety as well, because they come hand in hand. We want to feel physically and mentally safe to be ourselves. And then if we feel safe intrinsically, internally, we are then going to be able to externally communicate how we feel, learn, and develop, which is then that growth mindset part. Let me know if that is clear enough for you. So silence, yeah, it teaches us. It could be complacency. Yeah, we could get to that kind of like, yeah, we're just doing our thing now. People might feel unappreciated because there's silence. They might be silently checking out. They might be fearful of speaking out. There might be a lack of encouragement, low motivation. Means there's no problems and things are running smoothly. It could be leader overwhelm, lack of direction, being unengaged. Yeah, not wanting to input. Yeah, may not feel valued. Yeah, some really great ones there. Silence is a really interesting one because silence could be everyone's just getting on with stuff. However, I would say that when teams are getting on with stuff and they're still driving towards results, I'd still, as a leader, want to be hearing ideas of how we can improve. Because actually, if they're feeling really safe and solid in what they're doing, naturally, ideas to get better will start to flow. Silence could mean that we're starting to feel that disengagement, like you've all said. They may not feel valued and they start to just go, oh, I'll just get on with it. And when we start to go into that, just get on with it, then we're losing and starting to get into that fixed mindset is those spotting those signs, which we're going to look at in a moment. Yeah, there might be team members, Simon, who are lack understanding, but yeah, they feel like they might get
Okay.
ridiculed if they admit it, and it's so
Like,
true. That would mean that someone doesn't feel psychologically
seminar
safe.
about school format.
Someone's just come off mute. Do you mind someone? I can't tell who it is. Thank you. Um, so, they might be afraid of ridicule if they admit it. I mean, this is the thing. We could be working somewhere for absolutely years, and someone could still then say something, particularly in the world of like lots of jargon and acronyms, where someone goes, well, I just don't know what that is, and maybe I should already know it. And I'm sure as leaders, you've had that as well, when you're like, I feel like I should probably already know that, but I can't think what it is. But they're the moments, they're the beautiful moments where as a leader you can go, sorry, could you, I seem to have just forgotten how what that is. Could you, let me know? And it's just showing visibly, admitting that you're not sure of it because it's okay. And that type of behavior is going to allow other people to then feel comfortable in sharing that they don't know something and they're not sure how to do something or how something works or whatever it might be. So as a leader, we need to consider how we manage ourselves. When I say manage ourselves, thinking about our own nervous system regulation, so how we are keeping calm under pressure, how we are softening if we're in a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, and being aware of what our physiological state is and how that may shape our communication to people, whether it's in tone of voice or, being a bit more blunt or not having the headspace and shutting down. Some people might go very extroverted, some people might go very introvert when the pressure's on. And so being aware of what we're actually giving out, then being aware of how that behavior and action is influencing the other people around us because we love connecting with people. So our mirror neurons in our brain love copying, essentially. So have you ever been in a space where someone's like proper venting and going, "Rah, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened." And then suddenly a room that's quite calm has suddenly gone, "Yeah, actually, I agree." And it seems to just ripple effect. And you're like, "Oh, what's going on?" We were all feeling okay. And now suddenly we've gone, whoop. Um, this is where we're just trying to connect. We're trying to find that common ground. And so we kind of jump onto it because then we're feeling that connection. And because our brains find it easier to go to that negative, unfortunately, it's quite easy to do that. And that ripple effect can be quite tricky to deal with. However, we can use that as a superpower too. So if we're using our mirror neurons with people and we're sharing positivity, even when we're feeling under pressure, even if we're finding it quite hard and we're going, do you know what? I feel super stressed right now, but you know what? I'm making a conscious effort to try and still stay positive, and you're actually communicating and being transparent with it. You will still help people bring it on board, even if it is a bit through gritted teeth, or you're even having a joke and a laugh about it, because it's going to mean that you feel safe together in a pressure situation. And when you have those two things, that's going to drive results because then people are naturally just going to then, give that effort from their own accord. And when people like make decisions and put effort in and motivate themselves, there is always a significant increase in output rather than someone telling someone what to do. And Holly, you're absolutely right. Individual personality is super, super come into play here. If you're an insights person, all of these different types, or Myers-Briggs, or whatever you use, these personality types are hugely fundamental because what we want to see in one personality type is going to be really different in another. And the more that we know that, the better. But what's interesting is even if someone's leading with extrovert, doesn't mean in their pressured state, they are necessarily going to display that. You may see someone who's incredibly introvert suddenly go very extrovert. You might see someone very extroverted go very introverted. And that's about getting to know your team. With or without a psychometric, you'll get to know how they share and how they kind of display their stress because everyone has their own different things and every human being is nuanced with that as well. So, how can we spot some signs? Let's have a little bit of an individual and then team diagnostic. So, the individual, of course, could be looking at yourself, but it also could be looking at individual members of the team. And then we're going to look at how that can affect the team too. So, there might be, and these are just some examples, there might be individuals who suddenly get that over reliance on certainty. So, we've tried that before and it didn't work. I want to stay in my safe space. because, we're just going to keep staying doing the thing we're doing, even if it's frustrating everyone, because we did a little bit of risk and I dipped the toe in there and it didn't quite work for us. So therefore, I'm coming back to my safe space and I'm not willing to kind of go into that again. We might need to start to look at that because that's an element of demotivation showing up because they're not feeling safe or motivated to take a step into the unknown and stretch that comfort zone. You might have someone who is perhaps being a bit more defensive with their explanations. So you could come and ask them a question about what made them do X, Y, and Z. And that could be coming from I'm just being curious. I'm just want to know how the process works. No negativity or judgment in there. But because of someone's internal state, or perhaps, the culture around is sometimes a bit more blame culture or fear culture, they may get more of a defensive explanation. So I'm telling you all the reasons why I did what I did rather than like, what actually happened and the impact of it. So I put why not what there as just a little reminder that actually when we're asking our team questions, it's a really clever little quick trick. If you're asking them something and you want to know like why they did something they did, avoid using the word why. Why do you think that? I'm using the word why so much now I'm talking about it. Why do you think we want to try and avoid the word why? Yeah, it could be a bit blamey. Yeah, absolutely. Might be a bit too direct. Now, don't get me wrong, people feel questioned, could feel a little bit aggressive. Now, of course, tone of voice, body language, all of those things are going to come into play here as well. Sometimes it's too big of a question. Absolutely. Yeah, totally. But when we use the word what, it just softens it. Rather than why did you do it like that, which could feel a bit accusatory, or yeah, sounds like you maybe don't believe them, or you're already questioning something. Actually, the what is curious. Like I'm really want to know and I'm open to learn. And you're looking for that kind of process and understanding as opposed to like, yeah, drilling into a thought pattern or something like that. So absolutely, we want to just make sure our language is in a way that is opening up curiosity. It might be that an individual feels demotivated and is starting to get into that fixed mindset because they're holding back ideas. Or you might spot them delaying contributions, or of course, this could be in yourself. You might start to have loads of ideas and then go, actually, I'm not going to say that because that person's going to just take the mick out of me. Or, if I say that, they'll write it down on a bit of paper and then it'll never get looked at again. And then I'll feel like I've been rejected again, or whatever the different thing is. All of those actions can then just make you go more, "Oh, maybe I won't bother next time." And as soon as we start to do that, we're then starting to move back into that fixed mindset as opposed to that growth mindset. Also, people who are working in isolation more. Now, obviously, again, this is very much a personality type thing to be aware of. There are going to be naturally people who prefer to work a bit more siloed, a bit more in their own space, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But equally, in a team, we need a bit of both. So it might be that someone, kind of goes into their comfort zone of being on their own and almost hermiting. That could show that demotivation. If you've got someone who normally does work in the team really, really well and starts to actually isolate themselves, again, it could show they're demotivated. So again, it comes down to knowing your team, but being aware of it. And also, you might see a noticeable dip in just their general engagement. Maybe it's after particularly some one-to-one feedback or some team feedback after something's gone a bit wrong, or there's been a disagreement, or there's been a setback on something that they, had quite a lot of investment in. So it's being aware of those demotivational states because anytime someone's demotivated, it's the start of, going into potentially a fixed mindset. And we want to try and do things that will help bring them into that growth space. In a team, this is when growth mindset drops. You'll start to, well, you might not even notice it. It doesn't very often look dramatic. It can look very efficient and a bit like what we talked about before with the silence. You might suddenly get fewer questions in meetings and you think, oh, great, everyone's on board. Everyone knows what I'm doing. Boom, let's go. You might get quick agreement. No one's challenging you. And actually, there might be some mistakes happening, but actually, it's all being fixed under the radar. No one's like displaying it and making it visible. No one's discussing it. Everyone's just sort of covering it up essentially and quietly fixing it. And actually, any learning conversations are happening before, sorry, after a decision, not before. So these kind of spaces of like, you're not seeing that involvement in people wanting to be part of something. But as a leader, sometimes, particularly when we're under pressure and we haven't got a lot of time, we can see that as, oh, great, everyone's happy, let's go. Or, people are getting on with things, or people agree with me, so that's great. So it's just being aware of that shift. Okay. So a few things to think about. We call it the experiment mindset. So we can often lose growth mindset because we think that everything has a specific outcome. We go into something and go, right, we've got a problem to solve. And I see this all the time with leadership and management that, we're like, right, we need to solve this thing. I know exactly how I'm going to do that. And okay, yeah, absolutely. You do, I'm sure. And your idea is probably great, but sometimes we can then forget to open that up to other perspectives. And this is where the experiment mindset, which is essentially agile thinking, comes in. It actually looks at how can we like make something like look at different perspectives. How can we like make a decision and go, right, what can we learn from that decision? What could we make and enhance better? How could we evolve that in a different way? How could we innovate? So things that we might want to think about is how we model as we go. Things don't have to be perfect. So it might be that you're opening up and going, right, we need to solve this thing. I want some ideas. And you know what? Let's treat this as a beta test. We'll just give it a go and see what happens. And then we'll figure out what we're going to learn from it. But what's important is if we throw that out there as a, right, it doesn't matter if it works or not, but we're just going to give it a, we're going to give it a go. Or you tell me actually in the chat, if you're going to throw out something like that as a leader, what is it important that you do on the other side of it, especially if it goes wrong? Provide safety and support. Thank you. Take responsibility. Yeah. No blame. Learn from it. Treat it as learning. Yeah, absolutely. It would all be very well a leader going, right, let's treat this as a beta test and, see what happens. And then as soon as it goes wrong, go, oh, I can't believe this has gone wrong. Duh, 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 and then start to create a blame culture with it. Or even it doesn't have to look dramatic. It could just be a subtle kind of like accusatory, like, we can do it so subtly, completely unintentionally sometimes. So it being aware that actually, if we're going to throw something out as something to test and try out, that we have that scientific experimental mindset hat on when it comes to the aftermath as well. We're using it as a learning space. Thank you. And making sure that in failure and success scenarios, it helps us learn how to move forward. Thank you, Felix. We want that Simon root cause analysis of the process, not the people. Absolutely. But also, there's no reason why we can't praise the process, even if it didn't work, because there's always something good to come from it. Because if we're using that growth mindset space, there's always a positive thing to develop and learn and celebrate from. So we want to create a safe space knowing that mistakes will happen. Make it just a normal thing. Of course, they will happen. And of course, we're trying to avoid them happening, but also there's no blame or fear if they do. And therefore, as a leader, we want to be asking lots of questions. What might we be missing here? Is there another perspective we could think about here? We want to invite challenge and questions and curiosity. So think about for yourself, where could you treat something as an experiment rather than a final judgment? And as we go through, think about it and feel free to answer in the chat because there might be things that are going on in your workplace right now where you're like, oh, actually, I'm already presuming that I know exactly what I'm going to do in that situation. Or I'm already presuming that my team is going to say X, Y, and Z, but they might not. So pop it in the chat as you think of things. The next one I also want to go through is valuing progress. Oh, yeah, I've just seen sport manager at Hall School. Sorry, I haven't got your name on there. Yeah, I've worked at the Hall School for many years actually in my previous life. And yeah, every day is an experiment. You have to be agile thinking in those spaces. It's always about being adaptable in that space for sure. And as we move into number two, valuing progress, I'm sure this is something you do a lot. But again, when we're under pressure, it's really easy to forget. Because if we only reward outcomes, we accidentally prevent that learning space. So whether it is, from a business point of view or, from a student point of view or whatever it might be, we want to celebrate the milestones as we go through and truly acknowledge them, whether things went right or wrong. Because we want to acknowledge that learning has been happening anyway. Because growth mindset isn't about confidence. It's about how quickly learning returns after pressure has happened, after things have gone wrong. So we want to think about acknowledging that journey rather than just the finish line. And that's sometimes, particularly if you're working on a particular project or something like that, it can be really easy to forget that. But actually celebrating those successes as we go, as well as learning from them as we go through too. What moved forwards? That's a great question that you can ask. It's like, great, okay, this went wrong, but what did move forwards? There is always going to be something that is improved. Even if it's all gone completely wrong, you're still going to know what not to do next time. So that's still learning. We can still celebrate it. What did we learn? So have a little think and pop it in the chat as we go. What progress do you think that unintentionally might go unnoticed in your team? Because people are doing their day-to-day stuff all the time. And as all human beings kind of do, we just sort of forget, you know, it becomes our norm. It's a bit like, if you've got like a picture on your wall or something on your desk, after a while, you just kind of see past it, don't you? Because it's always there. And that's what can accidentally happen sometimes in team. Now, another one as well is about repetition and habit building, because actually we can talk about mindset, but actually it's the reinforced behaviors that actually shape what we do. So as human beings, everything we do is a bit like a feedback loop. And dopamine, particularly as a chemical response, is something that's so important when it becomes about reinforcing positive behaviors. So James Clear, I don't know if any of you have read Atomic Habits. It's a great book. If you haven't, I recommend it. He said habits are a dopamine-driven feedback loop. When dopamine rises, so does our motivation to act. Dopamine is that quick reward, that nice feeling when you go, yeah, I did that. But it's a very quick and fleeting one. And because it's quick and fleeting, we want more of it. When it happens, we love it and we want more. That can really be our downfall in some cases. Dopamine can go wrong in some cases because actually it feeds maybe being a little bit addicted to things that we don't want. But in a management situation, dopamine can be a really great superpower because when we are giving small bits of positive feedback, we are adding value, we are asking questions, we are inviting challenge, that drops that dopamine hit, which is then going to make people want to repeat it more. So what we can then think about is that positive habit reinforcement. We want to show the progress because that's opportunities for tiny little dopamine hits that we could then be building. What we don't want to build is by accident dopamine hits based on negative habits. Things that, if there's something that everyone in the team seems to do that you're like, well, I don't know why everyone keeps doing it. That's not how we do it. It's very likely that somehow there's a little bit of a dopamine feedback loop that has gone to the wrong angle. So it's then looking at it and going, what can we do to disrupt that pattern and create a new positive cycle? We want to acknowledge things and then repeat it. So when people go, oh, we try to change that, but it doesn't work, that's often, well, is always pretty much lack of consistency and repetition. When we are changing something and doing something new, it takes longer than you think. It's a bit like, if you're learning how to delegate to people, you're finding it a bit tricky because it's one of those things where you're like, it's easier if I just do it myself. But actually, you're like, no, I want to empower my team to do things and I want to upskill them and teach them. Of course, there's going to be an element where that first stage of that is going to feel clunky. Results might drop a little bit because people are learning and finding their feet. But it's one of those longer term rewards that is going to make your team feel better and you're going to be upskilling a lot more people. So it's worth doing it, but it's going to take longer in the beginning. So that dopamine is super important, particularly when change comes in, because that's how you're going to get that consistency change. So if you've got anything that you're doing, and feel free to pop it in the chat, if there's something where you go, we keep trying to implement this and it keeps not working, Can you identify where that lack of consistency is maybe dropped? Maybe it's people have gone back into old habits. What could you do to shift that with the dopamine hit? Because we can accidentally reinforce and, change those behaviors so easily. I'm just having a look at the chat actually. Coming out of your comfort zone, standard routines, adapting to change. Thank you. Yeah, they're absolutely great ones. Now, another one I want to share with you as well is gaps in awareness. So we don't like default to certainty because we go, yeah, I know best. It's just because we want to show our authority and expertise sometimes. We want our teams to feel safe and you want them to feel confident in your leadership, yeah? I have a dopamine loop for the Biscoff mini eggs at the moment. Oh, yeah, I feel you there, Simon. I can relate to that one. They are amazing. Um, but when we get to those moments of wanting people to feel safe and we want to show our authority, not in an authority way, but in a like people feel confident with where we're steering the ship, that can sometimes make us get a little bit nervous about putting in this whole growth mindset thing of asking questions because suddenly it's like, oh, will I look like I don't know what I'm talking about? Will I look like I'm exposing lack of knowledge or like I'll suddenly get under scrutiny or something like that? But at the end of the day, it's not about knowing everything. We want to be like a learn it all leader rather than a know it all leader. So actually, confidence doesn't require having all the answers. We can be a very confident person and just go, do you know what? I don't know that. But you're the expert in that. I'd love to know. What do you think? That's really great because you're demonstrating that you're not sure, you don't know, and you're empowering someone else in their area of skill set. Curiosity will always beat certainty. So getting used to asking those questions to get understanding. And if you can utilize an outside perspective, you'll notice more of those gaps in awareness. Because sometimes I always say, like, if you're in the picture, it's hard to see the bigger picture. So sometimes we might need to step away or get someone else to observe where there might be a gap. And we want to make this thinking visible. Every time that you're thinking, I don't know that, make it visible by asking a question. Because actually, where the pressure to appear capable or confident, where could that be actually limiting learning or contribution in your team or for yourself? Because we can accidentally do that so easily. So I want to share with you before we finish today, just a quick tool that will just kind of, it's quite a nice little model to just kind of remember to help us with embedding some of that stuff. So like we said, teams don't copy what we say. It's about the behaviors and actions we're showing. So think about noticing things. So it's like, notice inside. This is an internal thing for you. Noticing, right now, perhaps this is just an example. I'm feeling the urge to close this down because perhaps I don't know how to move forward, or maybe the ideas are flowing too much and you're not sure what to do. Feeling what's going on in the inside here. Then you want to name it. What am I actually missing here? What's going on here? Because actually, do I need to open something out to another perspective? Am I just actually sitting in my own thoughts and not hearing other things? And then model it. Ask a question, model that you don't know, or that you're learning something, or you want to add to something. So talk me through how you're seeing this. Yeah. Or what assumptions are we making here? Is there another perspective we could ask here? Or is there a risk that we haven't named yet? You're not necessarily asking one specific person, you're just kind of opening it up. But that's going to spark ideas in people and it's going to spark a response in others. And this is how new neural pathways are being built. This is how our mindset is being shaped because it's all just neural pathways, lots of wires that are our mind. And when we can really think about, right, if I'm asking questions, other people are then starting to create new neural pathways that actually make them want to respond and share their ideas. And you might find that you unlock a whole new level of expertise that have been in front of you the whole time. But also, you'll unlock more in yourself as well, because the more you get curious, guess what? The more you learn. And then it becomes more fun for everyone. And then we all get the dopamine hit as well, because you're asking the question, you're learning, they're getting it because they're sharing. So it's a win-win feedback loop situation. So I know that growth mindset, particularly in like a tight hour, it's quite a lot. But hopefully that's given you a few things of like planting the seeds and how you can kind of go through your day and just notice how you're asking things. Or even if you're in situations where you go afterwards, maybe I could have asked a question there rather than just telling them the answer. they're all amazing things to do because even that awareness means that you'll change that thought pattern and that action and behavior next time. So, what I'd love from you, if you have time before we finish today, is I'd like you to kind of commit to a mini action plan in the chat. So, I'd love you to think about what are the main things that you've taken away from today, but also commit yourself to one thing that you're going to do off the back of this webinar. One of those seeds that have planted, what could you do that would impact either yourself, your team, or both? Let me know in the chat. Can I explain what these mean? As you're answering these, I will do that. Absolutely, Rob. So what I mean, if I just go back to that slide. So the notice is about you internally. What do you notice in yourself? Are you going, oh, I already know the answer to this, so it's kind of no point me asking everybody. Or is it going, oh my goodness me, I don't know what I'm doing. But I feel a bit underconfident to even ask a question. It's what's going on in your head as a leader, what's going on. Then the naming it is bringing it into the external space. So what could you do? Could you ask a question? Could you watch something from someone else? Could you open up a safe space for someone to share an idea? That's you doing that external behavior that we've been talking about. And then you're modeling it by actually doing it in the consistent way, like those marbles we talked about. You're doing it again and again and again because people won't believe you if you do it a couple of times because trust takes time to earn. Growth mindset, psychological safety, they're all interlinked. You need to do it in a consistent way, habit building all the time, that people then go, yeah, this is the norm, this is my safe space, I can do this. So this is just a good way of just going, right, notice what's going on internally, name it. I'm going to say what I'm thinking right now, and then I'm going to model it by asking a question or demonstrating something that has come off the back of it. We are opening up a bigger space for it too. Right, I'm going to have a just quick look at all your action plans quickly. Oh, lots coming in. Really useful. Psychological safety, how people respond, and you're new in your position. Ah, that's nice, Hannah. Role model experimentation. Yeah, must jump. Oh, no worries, Felix. Thank you. Continue to demonstrate. I don't always have the answer. Yeah, absolutely. Buy the book. Excellent. Organize a team day to get ideas. Yeah, you want to reach consensus with people, encourage new things, and invite challenge for that too. Recognize the silence as well as the noise. Excellent, excellent. Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I thought I recognized your name. Yeah, getting more curious, inquisitive. Wonderful, wonderful. Asking questions, better understanding of other people's knowledge so that you can kind of learn from them too. Fantastic. Comfortable culture. Yeah, absolutely. Making mistakes is great. Fantastic. And that's the thing. Growth mindsets, brilliant because it's our opportunity to learn. And, if you want to learn a bit more, then obviously at Gerald Training, we do loads of different things. But to develop your growth mindset, we have specific mindset courses we can do for your particular organizations, but also looking at level 3 and level 5 leadership management training or coaching. Effective coaching is also a great one for building your own and other people's growth mindsets. So we do lots of different things. And Karen, my colleague who's on here, will be emailing you after the webinar. So if you've got anything that you're interested in and want to know more about, then please do let us know because we love learning and we know that you do because you're all here too, which is fantastic. So if you're still here, any questions? And you can unmute yourself if you've got a question at this point. That's absolutely fine. And if any of you do have anything you want to ask and you don't want to do it in front of everyone, I will happily hang around afterwards as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me for this lunchtime. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thanks very much, everyone.